Can we talk about cult of personalities a little bit?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Because you touched on this earlier in our discussion. Like, you come out of JW cult and, you know, like, you're taught to, like, when somebody speaks with authority, you automatically like listen to them, kind of
Yep.
thing. Well, in the year that I've been like on Facebook in the XJW community, I've seen that happen. I've seen it with some well-known activists where that person can do no wrong because of the work that they're doing.
Yep.
Or so people think that that person can do no wrong. I've seen some people that have expressed this great desire to be leaders of men and women, and we are the first wave and all of the rest of us going into it, and we will bring down Watchtower, and, you know, we are special and everything else. Well, enthusiasm is great. You have to not fall into the trap of, one, wanting to think that you are like super special and a leader of people, and I'm leading the charge and I will be responsible for finally bringing down Watchtower.
Right.
But then also don't be one of the people that like will follow that person off of a cliff.
Right. Well, I mean, you have to use your critical thinking skills. You've got to find that inner voice. You have to learn how to listen to your gut. You've got to learn what intuition is and the fact that it's in there. You're just not used to listening to it. And you apply that to literally everything in your life. And if you learn to do those things, you're not going to fall for something like that. You're not going to be either the person who is going out there and saying things like that and trying to become a cult leader, basically, and you're not going to be the person who falls for it. Is their behavior matching what they're saying? Like, for example, the witnesses always said, we're the most honest people in the world. Right? But
I can't hear that without laughing.
Doctrine that allows them to lie.
Yeah.
If you can lie about one thing, you can lie about anything. Okay, so that's the kind of hypocrisy I'm talking about. That's the kind of disconnect that I'm talking about. And you're very right. There's a lot of it in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community because we were all taught to speak with authority.
Yep.
Even when we knew nothing. And so we speak adamantly sometimes, and sometimes we're adamantly wrong. All of us. All of us. And when we either, once again, we have extremes. So when we either follow somebody right off the edge of Niagara Falls, or we see somebody who is getting a lot of attention and we decide we're going to push them off Niagara Falls because there's that extreme too.
Cancel culture.
There are a lot of people, especially on the internet, who will attack without any idea of what's really going on. I mean, they don't even know what they're talking about. They just want to attack someone. Yeah. You know, you've got all types out here and a whole lot of trauma.
Yep.
Like a whole lot of really damaged people. And there's going to be some cuckoo in there.
We live in a world of cancel culture, which is really sad. I mean, there are a number of people that are doing some great stuff and people that just want to burn them to the ground.
Yep.
When that happens in the XJW community, my irony meter explodes all over the place. Because it's like, don't we complain about this exact thing inside the congregation and like inside the organization? We always had to look over our shoulder and everybody's always backstabbing each other.
Yep.
Excuse me while I go backstab this person.
But we're the same people.
Yeah, we are.
It's the exact same thing that happened. I mean, if you want to know what happens inside the Kingdom Hall, look at the ex-Jehovah's Witness community.
Yeah.
Because we're the same people. We just don't go to Kingdom Hall anymore. It's not like you walk out and suddenly you're a completely different freedom fighter person. I mean, that's not that's not realistic. We are the same people.
Habits are still there. That's why they're called habits. I mean, the like behaviors and ways of looking at situations and that they're all still there. Using that spring analogy, even when you are that spring that's bouncing all over the room and everything else, well, one of the reasons you're doing that is because you want to rebel against everything that held you in place to begin with.
Right.
So the things that held you in place are still influencing you because you are purposefully doing the exact opposite because you can.
Well, yeah, I always have a dumb analogy for everything. You may have noticed. My mother used to like to bring up religion and whine about religion all the time. And at one point, she was convinced that my sister or I or both or whatever were worshiping the devil. And I once just looked at her and said, look, don't you realize that if somebody actually did worship Satan, they would just be a really stupid Christian? Well, it's really not that different from that, right? Because if you believe in Satan, then you have to believe in God. And then you're just a really stupid Christian if you are worshiping Satan.
You know, like Watchtower used to always tell us, like, you know, everything in moderation. Mm-hmm. Okay, you know what? I'm sorry, folks, but that is actually good advice.
Yeah, it is.
It is actually good advice. Like, everything in moderation. I mean, you know, I'm drinking like this giant bottle of water and I could down 15 of these. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not good for you.
No, it's really
it's
not.
Just water. Well, yeah, but that much water is not good for you. Like, even things that are good for you in moderation. When it comes to the XJW community, okay, yes, you can be, you know, jacked into it, especially because we all have smartphones and Facebook in the palm of our hand.
Yeah.
But unplug from that as well.
Right.
You know, you could spend day in and day out watching every single XJW YouTuber and every single one of their videos and so on. But then you're filling your whole world with nothing but Jehovah's Witnesses.
And you've got to do something else.
Yes.
Because you're just a really bad Jehovah's Witness then.
Yeah, pretty much. Or maybe you are a good Jehovah's Witness because you're still learning about all of their doctrine.
Yeah, you're still, well, you know, it's funny. I've had to read more of their literature in the last year for, you know, research for my videos than I did, you know, in decades before. But it's funny to me coming back to it now, how absurd it is and preposterous. Just like, what? Mm-hmm. You know, but you're right. There has to be time away from it. You need a break.
Yep.
No matter how outraged you are, no matter how, you know, fascinating it is. And it is fascinating. Mm-hmm. It really is sometimes, especially when you start looking into the history and like Rutherford and Russell and the things that they did and the shit they got away with. Oh my God.
Yep.
The reasons behind some of the doctrines and some of the ways that witnesses behave. And it's, you know, some of the arbitrary rules and who made them up and why. It's really fascinating.
Yep.
But you can't let it take over your life.
Yeah. Because then Jehovah's Witnesses are still controlling your life just in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't have time for other things.
Yeah. So if you want to live a well-balanced, happy life, dare I call it normal, you know, you have to get some distance from the witnesses. And sometimes that also means that means distance from your family, because it's very hard to try to hold on to those relationships, particularly if you're being shunned. Now, I never tried to do this because I'm just really horrible at lying. But I know a lot of people who are trying to fade and trying to keep their families from finding out that they are no longer witnesses or that they are apostates or whatever. And I think that would be really hard and ultimately counterproductive. Over the years for me, I've got, again, extremes in my family. On one side is my mother's family, who were very ostentatious about shunning me until I backed up and said, fine.
Yep.
Fine, I'm shunned. And then they would have to reach out again because they couldn't stand the thought of me not actively being snubbed by them. Like they needed to keep the contact going, mm-hmm. so that they could say, you're a bad person, come back to the Kingdom Hall. You know, whereas my father's side of the family just dropped me like I was hot before I even got disfellowshipped. It was like, nope, you're done. We're done with you. And that's it. There's been very little contact since then. Most of it around funerals, honestly, or wanting to be around my children, which once we said no unsupervised visits, that just stopped. But I know what both of those extremes feel like. And it is one of the most difficult things that you will ever go through.
Mm-hmm.
My advice to people who are facing being shunned, rip the Band-Aid off.
Yes. Yes.
Don't try to hide. Don't try to lie about it. They will find out and it will be worse.
Yeah.
Just say, look, I don't believe this anymore. I don't want to discuss it. Not having that conversation. I'm not a Jehovah's Witness.
My brother did that. He ripped the Band-Aid off. He said to the family one day, he said, you know what? I can't subscribe to this anymore. I don't believe it anymore. He and I went for dinner together, and he said, actually, since I was 8, I didn't believe in it. He spent a lot of time hiding it and hiding it and hiding it. And then finally just, and even being disfellowshipped more than once, clawing his way back.
Wow.
When he came out and told the family, like, yeah, I don't believe it anymore. They tried to, like, convince him, like, well, what about your daughter? And what about this?
Yeah.
But he said to me, I felt so much happier that I finally just was able to stop hiding and stop pretending. For me, it was a year before I was able to finally do that.
Yeah, it's hard.
You're welcome.
I'm back. Sorry. I had not one but 2 sleepwalking little boys.
Wow.
Yeah, they were like walking around the room bumping into each other.
Like in 2014, I knew that I didn't believe it. I started even looking at some things in the Bible that we were always told to kind of like have on the rose-tinted glasses about, and just not think too hard about. But I really started challenging some of that and trying to see what Watchtower had to say, and even asking like some elders, like kind of putting some of this to him. And when he told me it's better if you don't think about that, like that was just kind of cementing even further in my mind, like this is not right. And like, finally, after a year,
answer my questions.
Exactly.
Wow.
And after a year of this, just over a year actually, I was feeling absolutely miserable. Friendships that I had with people who were non-witnesses and having to keep them secret because if witnesses found out and so on and so forth, it was a miserable time. And it was all because I was afraid of being shunned by people that wound up shunning me anyway, even though they didn't know about any of that.
Right.
So yeah, like when you say rip the Band-Aid off, yeah, it sucks. But you know what? The more you drag it out, guys, if you have hairy arms and you rip off a Band-Aid one hair at a time, it's super painful.
I did as much Band-Aid ripping as I could, but it still took me a long time. In fact, it was really when I had children that I stopped trying with my family, because I realized that they are not capable of love in the way that I have come to understand it.
When you had kids and you thought about like the non-relationship they would have with your mother and father, did that rip at you a lot?
It did. It still does in a way, because they are innocent and they deserve to have foundational relationships in their lives. And the fact that, like, I was willing to accept their treatment of me as this is just how it is. Right? But I am fundamentally unable to accept that when it's applied to my children. And I remember my mom saying something to me before she died about, well, if you don't get back to the truth, the Jehovah will kill the boys at Armageddon. And I said, then he is a monster.
That's what my brother told.
Not worthy of worship.
Yeah.
Isn't it something how even though you come to terms with the way your family treats you, they still have the power to hurt you?
Yeah. I talked with one friend about it who's in the community. who's also had like professional training and such. And I was telling her about that. She says, well, it's to be expected because like the family. And what are you taught about family? Blood is always thicker than water, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She says, except you found out that that's not true.
Right.
So I'm like,
and that's
oh,
another way that the witnesses gaslight you. Our families are stronger. Our religion is better. This is a bond of union. But then the way they behave is the complete opposite of that. My kids would love my father's family.
Mm-hmm.
My kids would absolutely, and the feeling would be mutual. But there's too much risk there. Like, I can't trust them with my children because, number one, they didn't protect me when I was that age.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to trust whoever's at the Kingdom Hall.
Yeah.
Problem number one.
Yeah.
Number two, they are hardwired at this point in their lives to brainwash. And they're going to be telling my kids, if they're allowed to spend a lot of time with them, about things that I don't believe are true. They are going to instill fear in them of things that I don't believe exist. And I already have a high anxiety child. He does not need any further, fear about anything.
Yeah.
And then my husband made an excellent point talking to my dad the last time we actually talked. And he said, I'm sorry, but I cannot, by example, show my boys that it is in any way acceptable for anyone to disrespect their mother. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so when I look at it that way, I mean, yeah, it sucks. And I wish that they could have those relationships. But at the same time, I'm not willing to sacrifice my relationship with them or their safety for them to have it.
Yeah.
Not worth it.
I'm just thinking about the XJW community and love bombing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is a very common thing.
Yes. And you see that a lot with the cult of personality types. You
do. There's a lot of love bombing. And I admit, like, there's a lot of times where, like, on Facebook or whatever, when I see somebody like post a picture of their happy family and everything, I actually put a love on that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love seeing people happy.
Yeah.
Especially if I know that they've been through hell in a handbasket. But there can be like a lot of, just like at the Kingdom Hall, like a lot of love bombing that happens in the community. And this can feel like good, especially if you're fresh out.
Yep.
But after a while, when you think about the love bombing, well, it wasn't sincere at the Kingdom Hall. Right. Is it sincere in the XJW community? Well, the intention is definitely there to be supportive, and that's good. But sooner or later, I think some people might depend upon that love bombing more than like actually getting therapy and so on.
Right.
And if that love bombing stops, they're left with nothing.
Right. And that intensity is impossible to keep up over time.
Yes.
It's not normal. It shouldn't be expected. And also it's not sustainable.
and it can also send, it can wind up sending the wrong signal as well.
Yeah.
Especially if you have somebody who was, say, very incredibly lonely in the congregation, no matter which gender you are. Like maybe you were single because you just couldn't find the right one.
Yep.
And then you get love bombed outside in the XJW community, and so you think like, oh, so and so is in love with me, and therefore I'm also in love with them. Like,
yeah,
it's a fine line to walk. Like, yes, being supportive of people is good. Being there for one another, like,
right.
It's a basic human decency thing to do. But at the same time, just like how there ought to be boundaries at the Kingdom Hall, you do need boundaries even in the XJW community as well. And
that's one of the things that's so important about getting therapy, because as Jehovah's Witnesses, we're not allowed to have boundaries at all. And so we don't know how to set them. We don't know how to enforce them. We don't know how to follow them. I mean, honestly, in my family, to an extent, a boundary is just a challenge. If you say no, it's an immediate like, why not, why don't you just this once, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter what it is. It's a challenge, and they have to make you do it, and that is very unhealthy. And yeah, we all need help learning how to use boundaries appropriately.
Can we talk about activism for a moment?
Yeah.
So, like, activism, I even said this in my Life After Watchtower video. Some people channel their like anger into activism of various forms. Yeah, I'm angry with Watchtower for like stealing so much of my life away.
Yep.
I'm angry with Watchtower because their policies kept the physical abuse that I endured a secret, even though in Canada it is mandatory to report. The elders
allowed it to continue.
Yeah, the elders knew about it. They were designated mandatory reporters. Everybody in Canada is a mandatory reporter, just so you know. It's in the law. There is no room for exceptions. Clergy penitent privilege is not even mentioned as an exception, but it was kept secret. So like, yeah, like I'm angry about that because there's no way that it should have taken until I was 16 and running away from home for child welfare to get involved. When I found out about the child sexual abuse being so rampant and everything, like that fueled my anger towards Watchtower that much more.
Oh God, me too.
But one thing, well, okay, that's especially understandable considering what happened to you.
Well, but I thought that I was the only one. I thought it was something about me.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was something about the witnesses, that it was a common thing. And when I found that out, man, I just, oh my God.
And so like the people that like they channel this and like, yeah, I want to bring down Watchtower and so on. And I want to get my family out. Like there's different driving goals that drives people toward activism.
And what was it that the witnesses said? What was it they called it? A great organization in opposition to Jehovah?
Yeah.
Like, y'all, apostates cannot organize. We can't. We're too damaged to organize.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I said it in my first video. Like, we couldn't organize our way out of a wet paper bag. It's true. We can get something started, man. There have been some awesome campaigns and protests and ideas started, but it always ends up with this crazy infighting. And yeah. So anyway, continue. Activism.
Yeah. So what I honestly feel too is like there's different flavors of activism, but so many people, because this black and white thinking is still ingrained in so many people, the attitude is like, well, only my form of activism is the right way. You have people that will stick to YouTube, and that's their activism. Great. You know, like, I mean, Lady C and JT helped me out a lot. The John Cedars channel helped me out a lot.
Oh, yeah, me
Your
too.
channel gave me something incredible to laugh at, thinking about those songs and articles and everything else. You know, and also inspired me. Like you talk about how much you like Thinking Caps On. Well, I have people like you to thank for coming up with that.
Thank you.
So
they're like, so great. I mean, they really are.
Like from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. You went before me, like, and so many other people, even before us, before YouTube, there was other avenues. And I've heard like audio recordings from like the 80s and 90s of people that had, I don't know, maybe it was like a radio broadcast or something, but like these audio cassettes that circulated. I'm amazed at how long it's been going on.
Yeah.
So, and there's different flavors. Like there's the protests. There's people that they call it Kingdom Hall crashing or cart crashing. And I've seen different forms of cart crashing, from very aggressive to like, do you realize that, you know, the Australian Royal Commission didn't, like, you know, the shades of gray all over the place, about 50 of them.
That one stunk, man.
I couldn't resist.
Which was one of the worst books ever written, by the way.
I'm sure it was.
Did you read it?
No.
I
saw the movies.
Oh, I couldn't bear to go to the movie. I couldn't bear it. The book was so bad. Like, I wanted to slap that girl so hard. Whoa. So did he.
Ooh, boom. Well done,
I was
Bridget.
just
Well
like, oh,
done.
come on, lady. Anyway, sorry. Digression.
Well, that digression's my fault.
Yeah, it was so nuanced. There's a lot of nuance
There's a lot of nuance,
in
yeah.
this whole activism thing.
And it's important to accept the fact that people have different ways and reasons for doing the activism that they're doing. I talked to one activist who was on the W5 No Witnesses special. When they crashed at Kingdom Hall. He got up on stage and was speaking into the microphone as instead of the speaker. And when the speaker's like, "Excuse me, sir," he's like, no, I'm talking.
I saw
You
that.
just wait."
Oh,
So I asked that guy, I said, what gives you the courage?
brass balls, man.
What gives you the courage? Like, I'm watching you and I'm feeling my heart pounding. He says, I have family in, I want them out. He says, that's what drives me to do what I do. So there are people that will take up activism because they want their families back. And to them, I say, good on you. Like, I appreciate that. Me, I don't give a crap about trying to wake up any of my so-called family members that are in, but my motivation is to inform the public and prevent people from joining. Yeah. And when it comes to the XJW community, I do things like thinking caps on, and like humorous things like that to help give people something to laugh at when they think about like this triggering thing. Like, well, that's my way of
the despair of realizing that your entire life has been wasted in a cult and you know nothing. Like, that is despair. You know, it's almost like the Robert Frost poem about two roads converged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by.
I did an essay on that in high school.
It could really make you despair. It could make you suicidal, as it has many people who have left or wanted to leave or whatever. And I could either let it consume me or I could laugh at it. And I chose to laugh at it because it's really freaking stupid. And I mean, you can't listen to those songs and not laugh.
Yeah, exactly.
Not like really listen to them.
So like my biggest thing that I just want people like that are getting into activism to think about is Watchtower's been around for over 100 years. 141 years now, I think, if I'm doing my math right. 1879 to now.
Around there. I think it was 1874.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So they've been around for over 100 years. They're not going to crumble overnight. Right? So when you get into activism, enthusiasm is great. And I'm not saying curb your enthusiasm. Right. But make sure you set manageable expectations for what you want to get out of it.
Yes. And is it reasonable, you know, to expect a big dramatic finale? Because we've been raised our whole lives to expect a dramatic finale. We're not going to get one when it comes to Watchtower. Watchtower is not going to go out in a blaze of glory. It's going to be a very silent little gasp as they kind of peter out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's already coming. They are in the spiral already. Yeah. Their numbers are dropping. It's the writing's on the wall. Their doctrine can't survive without 1914. And we've jumped the shark as far as 1914 goes.
Because Watchtower is not going to fall over and crumble because a few people get up and make some YouTube videos or start a Facebook group or, you know, insert online thing here.
I have in the past heard things coming from fellow activists that border on radicalism. And, you know, there have been recently in the news people who've shown up with guns and done things like that. And that is absolutely never the answer. And this is even, you know, some of the really aggressive forms of crashing and activism. It defeats the purpose of what we're all trying to do in getting the word out. It scares people. It reinforces their brainwashing and their coding and their conditioning and makes them less likely to be able to get out. And besides that, if you do shit like that, you're going to go to jail. And rightly so. Don't let the door hit you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And not to dump on anybody that has the courage to go into a kingdom hall and stand up and say, look, I was molested and the elders covered it up. Like, those people, I stand and applaud
Very
you
powerful.
for having the courage to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have the courage to do that, but that's just in my makeup. So if you want to get into activism, my advice, and again, this is a very younger to the community activist. Remember, I've only been at this for just over a year as of this recording, but find a group of people that have a similar flavor of activism for that you do, and collaborate, share ideas, build a project and, roll with it and everything. If other people have different ways of operating and whatever else, that's fine. It's fine. You don't have to be like, oh, well, they're just nuts for doing that and, poo-poo on them for doing it. I have a group of people that I'm working with up here in Canada where we want to kind of get in the ears of some politicians.
Yeah.
That's our angle. Yeah. And there was one guy that we invited to our community who's also in Canada here and has been at it for a while, and he's quite good at what he does. And we said to him, look, what we're focusing on is this. And he didn't agree. He's like, I feel like more aggressive forms of activism are what I want to do. And we said, okay, no problem. Thank you up front for your honesty. Like, we hope that it works out for you. And, go from there.
Harm, no foul. It takes all kinds.
Yeah. You don't have to be the right one. You don't have to be the leader or anything like that.
But you also have to consider the motive. So you have to know going in why you're doing it, what you hope to achieve, like what best case scenario, what's going to be the outcome here.
Yeah.
Also, if you're going to do like in-person protesting, crashing, whatever kind of activism, you need to read up on the local laws before you do that. You need to make sure that you, even if you're doing YouTube activism, you need to make sure that you understand copyright law and fair use and all of those things, because Watchtower is a large corporation with very deep pockets still. So you have to know what you're doing to protect yourself. And honestly, the most productive forms of activism are the ones that are credible, that are calm, that don't read as hysterical, but we're dealing with a lot of very emotional subjects and a lot of things that are very traumatic for a lot of people. And yeah, it's going to get emotional no matter what. If you want the Jehovah's Witnesses to stop using the 2-witness rule, you have to think about whether your actions as an activist are actually forwarding that goal or not. Yeah.
Are they credible?
Are you doing something that's going to have the desired effect? Are you getting the message out there? I've thought about, what kind of in-person protests would I be comfortable doing versus those that I would not. I could not do a crash. I could not.
I don't think I could either.
I have, for a lot of reasons, even 20 some years later, my experience is too raw in some cases for me to do that. I don't have it in me. The other part is that I have a temper that goes with this hair. And the first person who laid a hand on me is going to the hospital.
Yeah, they'd be hitting the floor.
I do not need that.
One activist, I have a lot of respect for her. She was one of the other ones that I first started listening to. Susan Gaskin.
Oh, yeah. She's great.
I heard her story on XJW Critical Thinkers. They interviewed her, and I was just inspired and moved by her and got to chat with her on Facebook. And this was when I was just getting started with my YouTube channel. And I said to her, like, okay, I've got the channel, I've got the name. I know that I want to speak out. I've got some things that I want to say. And she said, great. The biggest piece of advice that I can give you, she says, your activism needs to come from a place of love. Have it be motivated by that, and you can't go wrong.
Well, it's true. It does have to come from a place of love. And honestly, if we didn't love our family and our friends who are on the inside, what would even be the point of doing any of this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wouldn't, there would be no point. I mean, other than saying these people screwed me over. Well, eventually you got to move on from that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't about love, then why would we do it?
Like when I think about making something like your childhood drama videos or thinking caps on,
Yeah.
it's for me, it comes from a place of love for these ones that have been traumatized by that, to help them reframe it in their minds.
Exactly. That's what yes, that is what the Kingdom Melody analysis videos are about.
Yep.
That's what it's about. It's like taking the emotional pull away from those songs, and it's like pulling back the curtain. It's like looking at the man behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
You get past the clever resolution of the melody on certain words and the emotional pull of those chords and chord progressions, and you look at the absolute absurdity of the things that we sang or attempted to sing.
Around me swarms the devil's crowd, like bees that were molested.
Really?
Yeah.
That is an actual lyric that we sang. That's just freaking hilarious.
Yep. When I saw one blow up in the XJW community happen, I'm not going to say which one or when or whatever, but
There's
when I
plenty
saw it happen, it was really troubling for me. It really was. And you'll probably recall this. I reached out to you and asked about it, like, hey, have you seen things like this happen before?
Yeah.
I don't worry, like this does happen. Like this isn't the end of the community or whatever else. Like make friends, make meaningful connections with people in the community. But yes, you can expect that shit's going to hit the fan
regularly.
It's not the end of the world. You know?
And yes, there are people in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community who will troll you and harass you and drag you kicking and screaming into all sorts of drama. And the best thing that you can do in those situations is back away slowly and not engage. You know, behave yourself and don't engage with the crazy people. None of the crazy people.
Yeah. By their fruits, you will recognize them.
The only thing better than fruits is fruitage.
Yeah.